And welcome to this afternoon's webinar. Whose responsibility is it to find new business? This is the question I get asked all the time. Who on my team is supposed to go out and find new business? And the funny thing is, the person who asks me is usually the person whose responsibility it is, but that's another webinar, right? So we're going to work on developing high-value client relationships. I want to make sure you understand what all the parts and pieces are that make this work. There's some fundamental things that many of my viewing audience have not learned over the years about what the different roles are and who does what. So we'll get into that right away. But first, we want to thank a few folks. We have some sponsors. Our 2018 sponsors for the webinar series are our good friends at AV Franklin, formerly AV Stumpfel USA. Come see them at Infocom. They've got a wonderful new booth and the same great products and people. HireTrack, Lasso, and Flex are big supporters, and we welcome them as well. Square AV in Dallas, great company that has been supporting my Jumpstart Live workshops, and great guys. They would love to do some business with you. If you're coming to Dallas, these are the guys that can support you. And of course, Nationwide Video, who is in many places, but they're in many of our warehouses and on our show sites, so we thank them as well. I am still me, Tom Stimson, president of Stimson Group. I've been in the AV industry for 35 years or so. You can find me at all the usual places, and Facebook and YouTube and LinkedIn and all that kind of good stuff. So please do stop by and say hey. Now, let's get right down to the meat of things. I'm going to start with a story. Many years ago, actually it wasn't only that many years ago, probably 4 or 5 years ago, a company called me, a good sized company, and their issue was their salespeople were not increasing their business. They weren't going out and finding new customers. They were just working on repeat business, and they had, I think the number was 8 salespeople, and 7 of them did $1 million a year worth of business, and 1 of them did $2 million a year worth of business. And my job was to turn this $1 million a year guys into $2 million people. Well, here's the thing. I get in there and I look at it, and some of you have heard me tell this story before. And what I found out was, well, they weren't exactly salespeople. They were project managers with accounts, or production managers, as some of us might call them. As a production manager is a project manager with a budget. So some of these people were handling, basically their 6 to 8 events a year, because that was their entire capacity. There were a lot of association type meetings, $150,000 conventions. They could do 6 of them, maybe 8. They maxed out at $1 million. They couldn't handle any more business. And they certainly didn't have time to go out and find more business if they didn't have time to work into their busy schedule, because they were so involved in the delivery. Now, what about the $2 million salesperson? Well, it turns out he was in the exact same situation. He managed 6 projects a year, and it just happened that 2 of them were abnormally large. They had 2 projects. He had 2 jobs that were about $600,000 and $700,000 a piece. They took the same amount of time to prepare, same amount of time to manage, but because he was busy doing that, he couldn't go out and sell any more business. So he was maxed out as well. So the fundamental issue is we have a need for a sales function, but we don't have the people who actually are available to do it. Now, many of you also have account managers, and they max out on sales. They're too busy servicing the jobs that they sold to actually go out and find new business. So who's going to find all this new business? Well, first, let's agree that we have to fix the problem. This is much too important of an issue. If we don't fix the problem, then we have, your growth is going to stagnate. You have to add salespeople in order to grow, and those salespeople won't have accounts, but once they do get some accounts, they won't grow either. If you've stagnated and you're trying to grow your business, you end up selling on price. In effect, you will do more work for the same amount of money. You'll maintain your revenue numbers, but you'll make less money in the process. So not having the bandwidth to develop new prospects becomes a big issue. And probably the bottom line when it comes to margins, and as many of you lament to me all the time, is that your salespeople, hey, I'm making air quotes right now, you can't see me, your salespeople can't get to decision makers. Well, the fact of the matter is, your buyers aren't necessarily decision makers, and your salespeople are dealing with the people who are designated transactors, just like you have as a designated transactor. Many of you call your salespeople order takers because they just wait by the phone and take an order, and I think you mean it kindly, but maybe derivatively, that they're not doing the sales job. Well, guess what? The people that they're dealing with aren't really buyers. Okay, they're arrangers. So they're the counterpart to the order taker. They're spewing out a request to your order taker who's spewing out a response. So that's not really a sales process. So if we don't create a sales process, then you're kind of doomed to stagnation. You're doomed to having your people too busy or over busy, their calendar full with no progress, and you're going to sell on price. And I think we can all agree that just doesn't sound really awesome. So let's see what we can do about it. A couple of fundamental things I'd like to get you to think about, or unthink, I should say. Let's do some unlearning, first of all. We need to replace what you know about sales. Some of the things that we believe and that we assume we believe, as my slides jam up on me, is that if your salesperson is involved in the delivery process, they can't grow your business. We have to understand that. That's a fundamental need. The example that I described earlier was a simple case of the people who they thought were selling were actually project managing. They're involved in the operational delivery of the project. Yes, they're looking out for their customer, which seems like a salesy thing to do, but they're so buried in the delivery, they can't grow their business. They can't go out and find new business. So that's a fundamental mistake that many of us make in the AV industry, is that we leave our salespeople involved too deep and too long because we don't have a well-developed sales and delivery process where things are integrated. We often have a salesperson in place, if we do have a salesperson, and we use them at the wrong time. And in fact, you have very few times in your industry, in your business, where you need a salesperson. You need a salesperson when there's a negotiation, or if a buyer needs to be convinced to buy, which is another kind of negotiation. A salesperson is there to convert. And negotiation is how we make the conversion from a non-buyer to a buyer. That's when you need a salesperson. The rest of the time, we're managing something. We're managing a project, we're managing the account, or we're developing new business. Order takers are not a bad thing to have. Matter of fact, in the model I'm going to describe to you, most of you do need order takers for some, if not most, of your business. So let's don't talk down about people who take orders. We can find a better name for them. But the act of taking orders and processing a client request is fundamental to what we do. Okay? The fact that you can't find somebody who's good at that, who's also good at going out and finding new business, really shouldn't be a surprise when you think about it. Oops, sorry. Now, the last thing I want to make on this is that marketing and business development are not sales processes. So today, I am going to talk about marketing and business development. And I'm going to talk about their importance to making the sales process work better, and how and for building a pipeline. So marketing and business development are not sales processes. You don't do marketing to close more deals. You don't do business development to write more business. You do marketing and business development to create opportunities for your salespeople to actually do some sales and actually do some negotiation, do some account management, and build some business. So here's my graphically inept sales funnel slide that you've seen in many webinars. In your system right now, if you call me up and say, Tom, we're having trouble growing our business. What do we need to do? Who do we need to hire? Do I hire a salesperson? Do I hire a marketing firm? What is it I'm supposed to do? Well, the first thing I want to look at is, well, what are you not doing that you could be doing right now? And for many of us, it's simply we're not taking a look at the fact that we already have a sales funnel that we're not leveraging. You have contacts. You have people that you know of. Many of those people, with a little bit of work, can become good leads for your business. And leads with a little bit of work become good prospects for your business. And prospects with a little bit of patience and tiny amount of work will one day become opportunities that you can win and turn into projects. And how many of each thing that you have in your sales funnel is what is important. That's what we need to pay attention to. That's what we need to figure out. And how can we keep the number of contacts high so that we have enough leads to create enough prospects, to create enough opportunities so that we can do some projects and hopefully make some money. So the question is, we know what to do with an opportunity. We write a proposal, we close the deal, we do the job, and hope we do it again. The question we want to answer today is, where do new contacts, leads, and prospects actually come from? Besides word of mouth, the phone just rings, we've never marketed, all the things that you tell me all the time about your business. So let's talk about the sales life cycle. Whether you do marketing or not, you do marketing. Not doing marketing is a form of marketing. So if you have an unattended website or no website, you don't talk about your business, you don't promote your business, you don't have a Facebook page, that's all good and fine. You're still doing marketing. What you're telling people is that you don't care who finds you, and that is a form of marketing. But marketing's job, if we're going to grow our business, is proactive. And marketing's job is to establish the credibility of your business and build a brand. In other words, make the name of your company mean something to an audience, the right audience. Marketing is going to capture contacts and hopefully turn them into leads. And once we have a lead, marketing can actually convert lead to a prospect. Now, 10, 15 years ago, this was not common practice. Common practice was to take a lead and give it to a salesperson, and they were supposed to convert them into a prospect. Today, with the tools that we have and the way that customers learn about you, electronic marketing, e-marketing, we can actually move all of those functions into the marketing side. So marketing can actually get us to the point where we have somebody who thinks they might want to do business with you, and now it's time to inject a human in the form of business development. And business development is not a title, it's a process. So marketing is a process. You can have a marketing manager. Business development is a process. You can have a business development manager. But we don't go out and do biz dev. Okay? So business development's function, that process, converts hot leads into prospects. So if you get a lead that seems very eager and is making all the right moves, marketing can kick that right over to business development for business development to take over and move along more quickly. Most leads will convert themselves into prospects if your marketing is good. And then business development process will take over to convert that prospect into an opportunity. And then business development has one more function, is that they monitor client loyalty. Another complaint that I hear very often is we did the job and the salesperson doesn't think about the job again until the next year when operations is going, hey, do you have the dates for the convention that we do every single year at the same time? And they fall off the radar map. And unfortunately, what happens is if you do that too often and you don't keep in touch with the client and you don't keep engaged, another company is going to come in and take that business away from you by being more interested in the customer than you are. So business development process can help us keep in touch with those clients along with our marketing efforts so that we have repeat business, we can keep that business going on, we can continue to meet their needs or exceed their expectations. Now, there's a hard line between business development and sales, and this is probably a fundamental thing for many of us to grasp who are here today. It's a nice audience, by the way. Thank you guys for joining us. So there's a fundamental difference. Oh, let me remind you guys, hey, if you're going to ask a question, if you'll use the Q&A box, somebody posted a question here on chat, which I can't see easily, but I have it up in front of me right now. It says, how are you dividing the difference between a lead and a prospect? Good question. Thank you for asking. So a lead is somebody who knows who you are and you know who they are. That's all it is. It's somebody who is potentially a buyer, but they're unqualified. Now, you can differentiate between a lead and a qualified lead, but a lead is simply somebody who has identified themselves as a potential contact. Now, we can also get leads that we insert ourselves. For instance, if you go out and do a trade show booth or do an expo and you collect name badge scans, those are leads. So it's somebody who has identified themselves to you, but you haven't really had a conversation yet. A prospect is somebody who we have had a conversation with, we have qualified them as meeting our expectations for a potential customer, okay, and they are willing to talk to us more. I hope that provides you some clarification. All right, so there's a hard line between business development and sales. And we'll talk more about this as we go through the webinar, business development brings us this opportunity in from a converted prospect, and we're going to hand it over, and I'm going to avoid saying the word handoff, but we're going to involve the sales team at that point, and their job is to convert that opportunity into an order. It may be processing RFP, any one of a number of things can happen at that point, but we do have to get the business development person out of this process so they can go back to doing their job, which is developing more prospects. So sales now takes that opportunity, converts it into an order. Additionally, they take a customer who is somebody who buys from you occasionally and turns them into a client, which is somebody who buys from you all the time. So customers are transactional, clients are relationship. And we all would like to have some sort of relationship with a good relationship with a client, with a buyer, so that they will continue to do business with us, and that's important to consider as well. So the salesperson will increase client sales. They can do that in a number of ways by going into the client, going deeper and wider to the client, finding other divisions, finding more products and services that we can offer to them and develop the business. So get a bigger book of business, get a bigger share of the client. That's part of sales's job. Now, business development may identify that those opportunities exist, and until the prospect is a client, it's really business development's opportunity to try and develop that so that when they do bring the prospect to sales, that we're already talking about the broadest range of services from your organization. Now, CSR is customer service rep, and let's just, for sake of argument, say that is the order taker role. So customer service reps, a rental desk, any kind of transactional desk or person is customer service. You can call them whatever you want, but the function is customer service. So they process repeat orders. They maintain buyer relationships. Again, this is a buyer, not a decision maker. And if there are issues with the account, they send the issue back to the salesperson who's the account manager for that particular company. So a salesperson doesn't have to be involved in every transaction in a well-developed organization. But remember, these are all processes. In some companies, if you're a small company, if you're a startup and you're the owner, you may be all of these processes for the time being. But as the company grows, you're going to start offloading some of these processes into other people. Many companies tend to bundle business development and sales into one. And I think the big takeaway that you should have today is that you don't want to do that. Business development and sales are two completely different processes that require you be at different places at different times. You know, to put it in terms of a webinar, recent webinar, their hats don't line up. Okay, they're wearing you can't be sales and business development because you have to wear a primary hat that requires you to be in two different places at the same time. So that's why I draw this hard line between business development process and sales processes, because you can't do them both at the same time effectively or for very long. But if you're starting out, if you're growing your business, it may be the only choice that you have. All right, let me pause here for a question. It said, question is, if one of the responsibilities of CSR is to maintain a buyer relationship, but then hands the issue to an account manager, wouldn't the account manager need to maintain a relationship with the buyer? Yes, that's true. Let me finish the question. So that when there is an issue, they are handed back to the account manager. The buyer trusts the account manager to take care of them properly. Relationship equals trust. So yes, so the point of the question is, can you isolate the the client from the account management, and no, you can't. You shouldn't. The point is, if the customer service rep identifies that there's an issue or a conflict with the customer they're dealing with, we want to make sure they get back to somebody who can reconcile that for them. It also means that the account manager needs to be monitoring what's going on with their clients, and the teamwork between a customer service rep and a salesperson is paramount. So we can't work in vacuums, we can't work in a bubble. Okay? It's the same client, it's the company's client, but there's going to be multiple touch points, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. So thank you for that question. And you guys are rocking on questions today. This is awesome. Can you give more examples of how biz dev sales are two different roles in the company, not quite getting the difference? Yes, we'll talk more about that as we move on. Next question is, who is responsible for growing business within an existing account? That is the account manager. So once sales has taken over the job, they have to grow the sales from that client. And one more question is, especially from the point of client, from the client point of view, won't they get confused? All right, I'm going to address the multiple touch points between business development and sales in a couple of slides, so bear with me. All right, let's move forward. Now, I have a couple things I want you to remember. I'm going to check your thinking here again. In a healthy sales process, no is your friend. You want to be able to say no a lot more often. If your pipeline is big enough, some portion of your capacity is going to be no. You can't do everything. So we want to learn how to say no more often, but first of all, we have to have enough demand that we can say no. All right, we need to say no to leads and prospects that don't meet our criteria, that do not qualify. We want to say no to projects that are low margin or customers that are low margin. So we want to increase our capacity for no, and the way to do that is to have more options on business you can say yes to. Your pipeline must exceed capacity. A fundamental check from my point of view, if I'm looking at an organization, if your pipeline matches your capacity, that means your close rate is 100%, which means you're leaving tons and tons of money on the table. You have unutilized assets. You're not overselling, you can't grow the business. So you need to have more business than your capacity. You need to have more pipeline than your capacity. And if you have enough, you can say no. You don't have to say no to all of it. You could also choose to grow, which is an operational webinar. And then another important thing to consider in this whole sales process is slowing down. So you guys have got to slow down. Respect the timeline, work the steps. I'm going to walk you through some steps here. They're very important. Rush, rush, rush is not how we do business. You know, we chase RFPs, we get an RFP, we want to turn the quote around, we want to get the proposal to the client as quickly as we can, and then we sit around on our hands and wait. The time that we spent waiting, we should have spent developing that customer into a buyer before we ever put a proposal in front of them. So we needed to do a much better job of controlling the timeline and slowing things down. It's not who gets back first, is not who's going to win the business. And you can't win them all. If you're not letting go of business, if you're not going, hey, we didn't win that one, but thank goodness we have 3 more that we could win, okay, then you need to work more on your marketing and business development. That's the whole point of this. Develop a pipeline, let go of stuff. You can't win them all. If you are desperate for business, then you have a different problem. You probably have multiple problems, and that's a different webinar or maybe a phone call. So here's why slow is important. Slow is much less presumptuous, okay? Never provide unneeded information. As we work a client, as we take them through the business development process, we don't want to give them information that is not asked for or identified as relevant to the conversation that we're having now. So we don't want to push things through. We can take a much, much slower pace. Time is important. If you give a lot of time away, and that's what happens when you're rushing the case, is that you have all the time in the world to chase the client down, but guess what? They're busy. So you look desperate. If you will develop a little bit of scarcity, be highly professional, be highly responsive, but be scarce, that's going to inherently increase your value. Your clients have needs. Okay? The information that we need to provide addresses their needs. So we want to insinuate ourselves into the buyer's process, and all of that takes patience. And as we take a client through this entire process, we're going to introduce new collaborators all along the way. We're going to create multiple touch points. The methodology that we're using is what I call progressive meetings. Basically, you're going from one meeting to the next, lots and lots of short meetings. So you want to ask for meetings, you want to leverage, you want to get the first meeting as soon as you can. Leverage spontaneous moments. Be very opportunistic about getting a meeting. When you're asking for a meeting, offer very specific times. In other words, show them how busy you are, and you're only asking for 5 minutes of their time or 10 minutes of their time. Use a scheduling tool if that's important for you. Use the right method for the target. Okay? Different people respond to different requests for scheduling. Make sure you're using the right tool. If you're talking to a prospect, and again, I'm talking to the business development process here, you need to be a peer. Okay? Peers do not qualify each other directly. Okay? Peers don't go through that ceremony of finding out or asking the awkward question, well, are you the person who makes the decision on buying your events? That's not how peers talk to each other. So learn how to be a peer with the person that you're talking to, because what you're trying to do is simply get the next meeting. Avoid the self-serving questions like the one I just stated. Never ask a question that leads to a pitch point. If you're asking a question so that you can push some information into the conversation about how great you are and how wonderful your team is, okay, that's not how peers talk to each other. So that's going to kill the conversation. That's a very salesy thing to do, which is why we separate sales from business development. And anytime you're going into a conversation, and this applies to networking as well, have 3 questions with 3 follow-ups ready. Always be prepared to walk into a conversation and ask the right question. You have 3 questions. You're not going to use all of them. You're going to pull out the right question. That question has a follow-up. And your goal of any conversation when you're interviewing a prospect is that unless they disqualify themselves, is to get the next meeting. So we spent a lot of time talking about that in some of our sales workshop, The Unfair Advantage. We talk about it in the sales and marketing workshop. There's a lot more techniques that we can apply to that. So quick comment here. I want to talk about the difference between business development and account management. If your business is, say you're just a traditional rental business and you have a limited number of widgets that you rent, and you rent them to the same types of people all the time. In other words, you're not expanding your product offerings and you're not looking for a different type of customer. You tend to be a capacity-focused business, and you will use account management to maintain those clients and make sure that we're getting enough of their business, and other clients will find us through other means. We don't do a lot of outbound sales because when we're out of capacity, we have nothing else to offer. Okay. Now, if we're into the business of creating new products and services, then we want to sell to the same types of customers, then we want account management to go deeper and wider to that organization. And say, for instance, you're the event production company and you add creative or you add content, and you want your clients to know about that. It's account management's job to get in there and help the customer understand the other things that you could be doing together. Business development we use in best fit customers. And best fit customers are when we're trying to find new types of business that are buying what we're already selling. So if you're a corporate event staging company and you go out and do corporate events all the time and you want more corporate events, you're looking for customers that do corporate events. So business development is how we find those people. We have to go outside of our business and outside of our existing client base. So we apply business development to do that. And if we're looking for new types of customers and we want to continually introduce new products, then we're an enterprise organization and we want to do enterprise sales, which also uses business development. Most of the people on this call are either in the best fit quadrant or the deeper and wider quadrant. Both of those will grow your business. Enterprise is a very difficult approach to take. I'll just leave it at that. So for the rest of our conversation today, We're going to talk about business development who is promoting your process to best fit customers. Let me pause with a question here. Say, how do compensation plans differ between business development and sales? Yes, that is too complicated of a question for today, but shoot me an email and I'll give you a succinct answer. Another question, what is the problem with always saying yes to every quote we can close with a buyer? If we can get the client to book with us, why would we say no to some buyers if our margin is always 50% or more? Well, what if your margin could be 60% or more? Every time you say no, if you're meeting your margin, maybe your margin expectations are too low. Just because you can find people to buy from you doesn't mean you're optimizing your resources. So we're a balance sheet industry. We want to get the best ROI on our balance sheet that we can. Saying no because you got to a 50% margin, or saying yes because you got to 50% margin, might simply mean that your margin is too low. So you may be leaving money on the table would be my biggest concern if you're saying yes to every quote that happens to get you to the margin that you thought you were looking for. And every time you take on a client who is not ideal, they're using up space that an ideal client could take. And ideal clients are more loyal, they're easier to keep, they're buying what you're selling, they will let you make more money, they're better partners. All right. Question about recording. Yes, of course, we're recording. You'll get an email that lets you view this again. And can we download this presentation after we go through it with you, Tom? Yes, I don't normally put the slides up anymore with this, but you can certainly watch the presentation again, and you're always welcome to schedule a phone call with me to get some of your questions answered. Happy to do that. All right, let's talk quickly here about how the difference between the types of salespeople are. If you're a best fit business development person and you walk into a party, you're going to target specific types of people in the room. A deeper and wider business development person, or account manager more accurately, is only going to talk to the accounts that they have. An enterprise person will look at every account, everybody in the room, and consider them a potential account until they disqualify themselves. And the capacity focused person is going to sit in the corner and wait for people to come to them and ask a question. So if you're a best fit person, you're looking for people, very specific people at that party that you want to talk with and sell to. So if you're capacity focused, the account management helps the client adopt your process. We talked about that. Deeper and wider, account management helps your company adapt to the customer's process. Now, this is important because account management has to accommodate customers. If you're a capacity focused and you're a rental company, you have a process, you can make the customer conform to you. I should probably do an entire webinar on this one topic right here. If you're a deeper and wider organization, your job is to adapt to the buyer and do business their way so that you can get more of their business. And how many of us have had the experience of going into a client, we're doing lots of wonderful business with this department, but when we get introduced to another department, we find out that they don't want to work the same way. They're used to doing business another way, and we want to treat them the same way as we treat our existing client. They work for the same company. Why wouldn't we do business with them the same way? And this is a huge mistake. So we have to be very adaptive when we're working with organizations at multiple purchasing points. Now, best fit business development's job is to qualify the customer, and they have to fit your process. That's part of the qualification. Example I give you is when I was managing Alford Media, there's a particular buyer, corporate buyer, probably a pharmaceutical company, who shall remain nameless, who had an RFP form and spreadsheet that they expected you to fill out to do business with them. They sent you RFPs, and my attitude was, that's not a good fit for us. That's not what we do. I'm not going to respond to these things. All right, business development qualifies that customer. And I had a conversation with the buyer and explained to him why we weren't interested in doing that, but I would be happy to respond to his RFP in our fashion. So we were never a good fit. We worked out a little bit, but not really, really well. Business development's job is to disqualify people who don't fit well. And then enterprise, Your job, your business development is to be an expert at everything, to show how your company's an expert at everything. But again, I can do an entire webinar on that. So the question somebody should be asking me right now, because I brought up the idea of an ideal customer a number of times, is how do we describe that? You know, what's their title? So here's a quick list that I use with folks. You can develop your own, but these are the types of questions you actually want to ask yourself. You know, we need to know what the title is of the ideal prospect. There could be 100 titles, there could be 20 titles, there could be 10 titles that are important to you, but you need to be able to title these people in business terms. You need to understand how old they are. And this is a question that's going to shock a lot of us folks who've been around for a long time, because the people that are our age are no longer our ideal prospects. Our ideal prospects are actually much younger. What is their decision-making power? Many of us have clients or customers. Our ideal buyer is actually not the decision maker. But there's no way we're going to get to the decision maker without going through this person. So we need to understand what the decision-making power is of our ideal prospect and be realistic about it. But we also need to ask questions like, what keeps them up at night? You know, what are they suspicious about when it comes to you? You know, they don't inherently trust you. Why not? What are their concerns going to be about you? Where do they network? What do they read? How do they get paid? How does that individual make a living? Should affect how you deal with them and what's important to you. And then their career trajectory is important. You know, your ideal customer may not be somebody who's been in the same job for 25 years. Your ideal prospect may be somebody who's moving through the corporate trajectory, becoming more and more valuable to you as a contact. So these are the types of questions that you want to ask. You also need to qualify, and business development is going to do this for you. So we've got all these leads, maybe even a prospect, and business development is going to get in there and finish the qualification, or at least get a pre-qualification going. And here's some questions that someone might use in a pre-qualified checklist. So if I can get maybe 5 or 6 out of these 9 or 10, whatever this is, these 9 qualifications, they might be worth talking to further. So do they ask questions about your company? In other words, are they expressing interest in you? Are they in a position to influence the purchase? They don't have to be the decision maker, but do they influence the decision maker? How many degrees removed are they from decision making? Will they discuss their needs? Okay. Will they engage in an outcome-based discussion, or are they very much focused on the how you do things? Okay. Have they had a brand and capabilities presentation? In other words, do they understand something about your company and what makes you unique or special? It doesn't mean that they're not qualified if they have it. It just tells you what work you need to do next. Do you have multiple client contacts engaged or potentially engaged in their organization? In other words, is there a single point of entry, or are there multiple points of entry that are available to you? Will they talk about their budget? How much do they spend? Do they currently spend enough money to be worth your while? Okay. And this is the one that's absolutely most important to me, is that will they engage in an honest conversation about their needs and budget? Many people won't have an honest conversation with you, and I don't know why we do business with those folks. But for me, this is always an important part of my qualification checklist, is are they willing to have an honest conversation? So if I'm in business development, I'm going to focus on the hot leads first. In other words, someone we've done business with in the past, somebody who's already we've identified as an ideal prospect because they know they're doing the type of work that we want to do. So that's where I'm going to start my work. Most of your hot leads are already in your system. That's why they're hot leads. They're already known to you. You just don't have the capacity to act upon them. And then I'm going to start developing other prospects when I've gone through my hot leads. So as I'm not going to take regular leads, I want my marketing to develop them into prospects. And anytime there's a new prospect, I want business development to engage. So when electronic marketing has created a prospect, it's time for business development to jump on it as quickly as possible. As soon as that prospect expresses an interest in having a conversation, business development needs to be all over it. Now, what do you do with a prospect? This is going to hurt. You have to actually talk to them. And there's some millennials on the phone right now rolling their eyes going, Tom, Come on, that's so 1990s. Now, business development, you actually do have to talk to people. Digital marketing can only get you so far before you have to have a conversation. And the conversation may simply be an agreement to text back and forth to each other to get business done, but you still have to have a conversation. You have to qualify the prospect. You have to take them further into the process. You need to know exactly what your ideal prospect looks like to make sure that these folks fit. And then, this is key, you need to extend an invitation. You've had a conversation, this customer is better qualified, extended invitation. You have got to get deeper engagement. So move from a conversation to the next thing. I mentioned progressive meetings earlier. The whole point of progressive meetings is to get a series of short conversations leading up to a big one. It always concerns me when I hear a salesperson say, hey, I just talked to that new prospect. We were on the phone for an hour together. They're going to send me an RFP. And my heart just sinks. Because one of two things happened. They hit it off really well and we have a potential of doing business with them, or they're blowing us off by sending an RFP. And we won't figure out which one it is until long after the opportunity has gone by. So we send them a proposal, they don't call us back for 3 months, they give the job to somebody else. I don't like the odds. I don't like the 50-50 odds of having an hour-long conversation and getting an RFP. Traditionally, that's what we want salespeople to do. In 2018, that's not good enough. I want a series of short conversations that lead up to a big one. Each conversation lets each party qualify the other. We're going to learn about each other. We're going to have a short conversation. At the end of the call, we're going to schedule the next call and have a good reason to do that. Every conversation is going to be a new piece of content, tool, or a contact in the encounter. So I may have a conversation that simply talks about what would they do, what would they like to have different in their event this year? And they mention 3 things that they think would be important to not happen again, or what they would like to happen instead. You say, that's fantastic. Thank you for that. I'd like to get you on a short call later this week or early next week with the head of our engineering department, because I want to talk about this one specific issue, and I want to see if we have a better solution for you. Can you give me 10 minutes on Friday? Okay. Each conversation leads to the next conversation. We're going to introduce a solution. Or we finish the conversation and says, you know, I've got a tool that we could use. I'd be happy to share it with you. I'll send you to the link. You can use it online. It should help you better understand how this process works. If I sent that to you right now, could we have a conversation about it tomorrow? Okay. Everything's a progressive meeting, short 5-minute conversations. Okay. Now, back to that invitation. If we've had these conversations and we get to the point where we need to broaden the conversation, we need to introduce more people, now it's time to do the invitation. We're hitting it off. I want to invite you to something. Now, it might be invite you to pizza at the office on Friday, or cake day, or whatever it may be. We might invite you to meet the team, or maybe meet the owner or the executive in charge of your business. We have an open house. We might have an expo. We might need to invite them to a capabilities pitch or some sort of ideation session where we spitball and brainstorm on an event and show them our process and meet more of our team. We might invite them to an event or a project that we're working on so they can observe what we do in action and we can have a deeper conversation. Or it might be drinks at a conference or an expo. Okay? Or if you can play golf. Some people play golf. All of these things are valuable invitations. And sometimes the answer is, oh, thank you for the invitation, but I don't have time to do that. The more valuable the invitation is to the development of that person's career and business and project, the more likely it is you're going to get a yes. So we want to create these invitations. Now, very often what happens is what I described earlier is you have a conversation, the client goes, hey, this is great. You guys seem really awesome. Let me send you an RFP. Now we have to qualify again, because an RFP is not necessarily good news. Okay, so we're going to get an RFP, then we have a business development role of qualifying the RFP. Will the client have the right conversation to go over the RFP? It's not the standard, can I ask you some questions about the RFP and get some clarification? Are they willing to engage with your team at a deeper level? Can I have a positioning conversation? And positioning, in next month's webinar, we'll talk more about positioning. Positioning conversation means, can I take your RFP and can I turn it into something that will work better for both of us? In other words, can we use the RFP as a starting point and get a better plan together? That's a great way to qualify a client. If you can get them to an ideation session, that would be fantastic. Okay, so all of these are steps that will get you to the proposal. So I don't want to just respond to an RFP. I want to have a conversation. I want to have a ideation or brainstorming session. I want to create a pitch before I give them a proposal. I want to have an agreement in principle about the approach that we're about to take on your project. I want some feedback from the client that I can incorporate into that so that I'm giving them a proposal that they've already said yes to. And you're listening to me right now going, Tom, that's ridiculous. This would take forever. We don't have time for this. You can do this in 2 phone calls. So don't overthink what it is. You can have a $5,000 job where you talk to the client, verify that they've bought on budget, they bought on price before, and it didn't work out for them. Okay, you can make some modifications to their RFP that will get them the result that they want at a better price point than they were expecting. We can introduce some ideas from the team. Then on the next phone call, we can say, all right, here's what we'd like to do for you, and here's what it looks like. Does that sound like what you need? And if I can get that in for your budget, would that meet your needs? And the client says, yes, but I'd like to do this and this and this. And you say, great, I'll incorporate all of that in the proposal. So that's everything that we've talked about. And here's what the price is going to be. Why shouldn't we do business together? When can I get a confirmation from you? So we can take them through these steps actually very, very quickly if we want to. All right, most of you, let me pause for a question here. Thank you for this question. We typically don't get the opportunity to connect on the phone before we send over proposals for RFPs. Any advice on this? Yeah, at the risk of sounding really glib, stop it. Don't send a proposal without a conversation. I mean, I don't know any other way to do it. If what you do is valuable and important, and the client doesn't appreciate that, why are you doing business with them? Now, you're doing business with them right now because you have to, because you don't have enough opportunities. When I say you need the opportunity to say no, you need more no's in your life, this is a situation where you need to say no. The client won't connect with you before you send a proposal, discuss their RFP, to qualify them as a better customer. Don't do business with them. And I know that's not a satisfying answer, but knowing that your only other option is to say no, you're going to redouble your efforts to get the conversation. So now what I would suggest is to simply escalate. Say, hey, we have your RFP. And this is a salesperson talking, my engineering team has some questions and the owner would like to meet you before we move forward. Which meeting would you like to have first? We don't know which thing is more important to that customer, the engineer or talking to your boss. But if they still don't have time, you're done. You've done everything you can. I hope that answers your question. And I'm sorry it doesn't. I'm sorry there's not a magic wand for that. Let's talk about the bow tie effect. The bow tie effect is what happens when you have a salesperson and a client, and they're the only two people having a conversation. Everything that your company knows comes through the ears of the salesperson, and everything the buyer's company knows comes through the ears of the buyer or that individual that you're talking to. And then you have a whole bunch of people who are trying to execute in the background who aren't getting to talk to their counterparts at the other company. And this bottleneck of information is what drives operations people in particular nuts. It makes it very difficult for your accounting team to get the information that they need. Basically, everybody in your company wishes this didn't happen. But for traditional salespeople, we're trying to protect the client from my own company, and the client is trying to protect his company or her company from you. So we both think that we're doing our companies a favor by keeping the rest of the of our coworkers out of the picture. And this is what wrecks relationships. And the fact is, if I only have two people and that's the entire bond between these two companies, I have one relationship that kills the entire business relationship. So this is a very tenuous spot to be in. By introducing business development into this process, business development's job is to turn this bow tie around and turn it into a diamond. And once the account manager takes over, the account manager and the client's job is to keep all of these people connected together. I want my accounting people talking to their accounting people. I want my logistics people talking to their logistics people. I want my graphics people talking to their graphics people. Okay, that's a much harder relationship to break. It's much more difficult to have problems that are not resolved if you have all of these interrelationships going on between the two organizations. And account management's job is to keep the diamond together. So the diamond effect starts with business development. And business development's job is to introduce more people into the conversation so we start building the diamond, so by the time the account manager takes over, there's already a diamond in progress. So I know some of you are concerned about accessing decision makers, and here's some quick notes about how to do that. So if I'm in business development, first of all, I want to have a peer conversation. Nobody wakes up in the morning and says, "Oh, please God, I hope a salesperson calls me." We don't want to show up as a salesperson. We want to show up as an advocate and an expert representing an organization. So you can build advocates within the buyer's organization in order to get access to the decision makers that you need. I can do this from business development much more easily than I can do this from account management or sales. So if we want to build this advocacy and make these connections and build our diamond within an organization before we take over in sales, because it's very difficult to do after we've started a relationship. So you build your advocates. You're always holding the owner of your business in reserve. We don't want to bring the owner into the conversation too early, because I want my owner talking to their owner. I want to bring in my owner as leverage to get to the decision maker. So we build value in the progressive meetings that we're developing. And every time we add somebody to the meeting, I want to match attendees. So, hey, I've got the guy from my projection department, the head of my projection department, available for a call, but we would like to talk to the person in your graphics department to make sure that we're connecting on the images, on the image sizes that we're going to put on the screen. Okay? So I'm matching people to meeting. Eventually, you'll have a point where you need to talk to the decision maker, and you want to introduce your owner, your decision maker, into the conversation and get that one-to-one meeting. I mean, it's probably like setting up a meeting between North and South Korea. Everybody's got to match their generals, right? You have to have the same number of generals at the meeting. So that's how we're going to use business development to access the decision maker, by progressing the conversation and building the diamond at the same time. Oh, that's a repeat. All right, so we're almost at the end here. There's a chance to post some more questions. I got a question here. I'm going to answer that in just a minute. Before we do that, I just want to remind you guys about Jumpstart workshops in 2018. We've already had 2 this year. We've been wonderfully successful. Met a lot of nice new folks. We just had 80 people at the Jumpstart operations workshop. I think it was 2 weeks ago. My feet still hurt from talking for 2 days. So take a look at that. You can go to trstimson.com/jumpstart. The next workshop is on marketing and business development. It's August 7th and 8th. Registration is not open yet, but you can go register to be notified when it opens by going to the Jumpstart page. So make sure you're on the mailing list for me so that you can find out about these events. Go to my website, trstimson.com, click on download your free ebook, because who doesn't need a free ebook, and register for my newsletter at the same time, and boom, you're on the mailing list. So I'll send you an electronic copy of Learning to Expect Better, and every Monday you'll get the Intentional Success newsletter, and we talk about the business of AV every week. And I'll give you some of my best advice and ideas and case studies and things to help you run your business. So I hope you'll take advantage of that. While you're at my website, and there's a lot of stuff on my website, I've got lots of articles and blogs and tools and videos and access to your webinars, podcasts. I can't keep up with it all myself. So, but while you're there, schedule a free call. So if you have questions about today's webinar that you think are unique to your business that I can't answer in depth on a webinar, schedule a free 20-minute call. Happy to talk to you, happy to answer your questions, or just shoot me an email. I'm pretty generous with my time when it comes to talking about this stuff because I really, really, really do enjoy it. Our next webinar is in June. Oops, sorry. And actually, I believe it is June 27th. I don't have the date on here for some reason. We're going to talk about getting in front of the RFP, how to avoid diluting your value. So the natural progression from business development to sales is going to be the RFP, and some of the questions you guys have asked today about not getting connected with anyone over proposals before you send over a proposal. That's what we're going to talk about in depth in June's webinar. So how to get in front of the RFP, how to head off that RFP, and what to do when you didn't get in front of the RFP, and how you can resurrect it into a valuable opportunity. So do register for that one when the notifications go out. Another quick thanks to our sponsors. You guys have been great. Thanks for making this happen. Quick summary, and then I'll answer a couple of questions in the little bit of time we have left. Marketing is what creates value and interest for targeted buyers. Your marketing has to talk to your ideal customer. You don't care about anybody else. All you care about is your ideal customer or somebody who can become an ideal customer. So marketing's job is to express that value, get in front of those people so that they can learn about you and self-identify themselves as prospects for you. They need to turn themselves into a lead. Let marketing do the work so that the client will engage with you instead of you trying to hunt the clients down. So marketing will create the leads, and then they will identify the prospects in those leads. And this is something we'll spend a lot of time talking about in the workshop in August. Business development then engages with those prospects with progressive conversations about brand and outcomes. We don't talk about how we do things. We talk about how great it is when we've done them. Business development then initiates the conversation to turn it from a bow tie relationship into a diamond relationship. So in the progress of conversations, we're also opening up the two organizations to create multiple touch points within each other one and create some bonds that will be very difficult to break. And then business development establishes the account manager as the resource for project development. So business development is never an expert on getting the job done. They're only expert on the brand and the team and bringing the two parties together. Account management is the expert when it comes to execution. And the business development can help establish that. So this is how we find and develop new business. This is the process that we follow. You need to take your good prospects and do something valuable with them instead of just chasing RFPs. All right, I got a couple questions here, and then we will wrap up. What happens when the owner is the business development person? So I'm assuming you're talking about in your organization. If your organization business development is done by the owner, it's still the same process. It's still their job. Now, the implication of the question is sometimes owners don't always do the job they're supposed to do because they're the owner and they've got to go polish their boat. That's a different conversation. But the process is the same. You can be the owner of the company and also be an employee. And if business development reports to marketing, which in some organizations it would, when the owner is being a business development person, they are working inside the marketing process. So that's a level of maturity that not all owners have, but it is a good question nonetheless. One more question here, and we will wrap. So producers versus meeting planners. Of course, we want both, but do you have thoughts on who is best to target? Okay. You have to go through the exercise of figuring out who your ideal customer is. They can have many, many titles and many, many functions. So a producer or a meeting planner is somebody who has responsibility for delivering an outcome. They are slightly different people, but they're still doing events. So I don't think one is necessarily better than the other unless producers are the only ones that have the kinds of business that you need. But I will say today, in most of the organizations that I work with, we discover how valuable meeting planners actually are to their business, and that most of their contacts and most of their ideal prospects are actually meeting planners and not event producers. So figure out what ideal is for you, and don't be surprised if multiple job titles happen to fit into it. So, well, there you go. We're out of time. It was fun. Thank you for all your great questions. The recording will be up. Hopefully by tomorrow, you'll get an email to let you know how to access it. Tell your friends, have some more people join you. And if I didn't answer your question, shoot me an email. I'll be happy to answer it offline. All right. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you next month on the next webinar.